Hello, everyone, and welcome to God, can't even say the name of the goddamn channel right. Welcome to Cinemateq. And I'm hoping right now that all of my audio issues that plagued me in the past are behind me. If that is in fact the case, please get in the chat and let me know if you can hear me properly and that there's no echo. There's always a chance that that could be the case, and if it is the case, I'm going to kick somebody right in the blue snowballs. It's really freaking irritating when this thing doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And anyways, I'm not going to be talking about that anymore. We are here to talk about the film news that made the headlines this week that I'm sure we've all been talking about and we've all been thinking about. You saw in the thumbnail for this that I'm going to be talking about Amazon helping out the South by Southwest Film Festival and how I think that could affect film festivals down the road, as well as what it means for the actual filmmakers who will be attending. But that's going to be a little bit further into the stream. We're going to touch on some other film news before that and after that, because there's just lots of cool things to talk about this week when it comes to film. So before I get into this too far, I'm going to make sure that everything is the way I want it to be set up. Good. Also, for those of you who are watching right now at the very beginning of the stream, I'm going to urge you to not look at this red dot on the tip of my nose. It makes me feel like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Super terrible. However, it did provide me with an excellent segue into the first article that I wanted to bring up, which was the fact that Top Gun Maverick is now a Christmas movie. Thanks, coronavirus. So this one pretty much speaks for itself. Top Gun Maverick, the film that I can't wait to see because I'm a big fan of the original Top Gun movie, has been moved back to December, specifically December 23rd. So if we are all allowed out of our houses and we can visit family and get to see them again after long periods of social distancing, we can also escape from them while going to see Top Gun Maverick and not actually talk to them, which I'm sure might be nice for some people. I'm happy that this news has come out because now I know exactly when I can see Top Gun Maverick. I am wanting to see this film so badly. And that's just how I wanted to start the show off. My goodness. This is good. This is good news. Oh, something else that this article actually brought up that I thought was interesting that I also wanted to mention is the fact that Top Gun Maverick is going to be competing directly, maybe indirectly, with Denis Villeneuve's Dune film. And I thought this was an interesting thought because we haven't really heard anything about Dune as a project since it wrapped in July of 2019, which feels like 10 years ago. And maybe the post-production on a film like Dune should take 10 years, and this is actually just very appropriate. I'm wondering, though, and this is also mentioned in the article, will Dune actually get pushed because it is such a VFX-heavy film? And how have those post-production schedules been affected by the coronavirus, by people working from home, by self-isolation, and all of the like? We don't really know for sure how that's all going to shake out. But if I can get out of self-isolation, if I can go out into the world after missing potentially spring and summer and fall and not going to my friends' weddings and missing out on almost every major holiday and just being inside for months and months on end, if I can emerge from that and go see Dune and Top Gun Maverick back to back, my God, what a wonderful way to leave your vault. I really hope that actually happens. I mean, I would rather get out of my apartment before December, but it's not all bad. Now, the next little bit of film news that I want to touch on was just announced, actually, just maybe a couple of hours ago. So this is hard-hitting. This is breaking news, everybody. Marvel has come out and said previously that a lot of their different films are being pushed back, or that they were at least going to be missing their initial release window. It had a lot of people speculating maybe those films are going to be coming to Disney Plus, at least the ones that were shot, Black Widow being an obvious candidate for that, but it turns out that that is not actually going to be the case at all, and Marvel has done a very simple yet smart thing with their release schedule, and that is just moving all of their films back one release slot. Marvel is in a unique position because they tend to plant their flags on particular dates years into the future for the releases of their films, and it looks like they've just taken that and pushed it back a bit, which is good. It's smart. So, of course, Black Widow was the next Marvel film to be released, and according to this /film article, it has been pushed back to November 6th, which was the initial release date for The Eternals. The Eternals has now been moved from that date to February 12th, which was the day that Shang-Chi and Legends of the Ten Rings was supposed to come out, which has now been pushed back to May 7th, which was when Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was supposed to come out, and that is now being released November 5th, 2021. It is, as /film points out here, the longest delay out of all of the films. And maybe that could actually be for the best, because Doctor Strange is going to be a very VFX-heavy film, and the additional time that they have to work on it, assuming that their production schedule doesn't get pushed back more than they think it will, could benefit the film. And then we get the somewhat sad news that Thor: Love and Thunder will now be opening on February 18th, 2022. So that is a long way away, just a little under 2 years. And then, of course, we also have Black Panther and Captain Marvel 2, both of which will be coming out in 2022, one in May and one in July. That's actually pretty close for those two films to be coming out together. Marvel's going to have a very interesting 2022, depending on what they end up doing in the later part of the year. Because if they stack their releases together, February, May, and July, it doesn't really give them a good end of the year release. And it seems like they have wanted to have those recently, especially with the Eternals scheduled for November, now February of this year, and with Doctor Strange, with Thor: Love and Thunder being scheduled for November 2021, but now that slot is occupied by Doctor Strange. I wonder what they will do in 2022, and I guess they're probably just waiting to figure out what they should be doing because of the coronavirus, because of everything that's going on in the world right now. If you're here and you're watching, let me know who you are and where you're from in the chat. Say hello. Let me know if the audio is actually working and I haven't just wasted the last 7 minutes or so of streaming with bad audio. I'd much appreciate it. Moving on from this to a little bit more Marvel news, and I know that I usually don't talk about Marvel stuff, but this was actually one that caught my eye specifically, and it's something that we don't necessarily expect to happen with the coronavirus outbreak happening and with productions being stalled and with release dates being pushed back, is that this does give time for films that are done production to be tinkered with a little bit more. And it appears that because of this, the composer on Black Widow has been fired. And a new composer has been hired to take his place and create a new score. Odds, I don't know. And the article listed here by Birth Movies Death doesn't really get into it too much. But there's no real suggestion here that this was the result of a coronavirus. Like Marvel saying to themselves, like, hey, look, we've got an extra month. We're not huge into this score, so why don't we just get a new score made? This could have happened anyways. We don't really know for sure. But it does seem like it's something that maybe, just maybe, they're doing because they have a little bit of extra time, considering how close we now are to what the Black Widow release date would have been. So, who got fired? That would be none other than Alexander Desplat. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because he is very good and has worked on a number of excellent films. He has done the scores for Zero Dark 30, Godzilla, The Imitation Game, Little Women, which he was nominated for an Academy Award for this past year. Also doing Isle of Dogs. He's a big collaborator with Wes Anderson. Let's see if I'm just reading this right. He has won 2 Academy Awards. for the Grand Budapest Hotel and The Shape of Water. The guy is real good and very well respected. Actually, if you go down to his accolades and, well, I guess go to the other page that shows his accolades, he has been nominated a bunch of times by the Academy Awards. He's been nominated and won some BAFTAs. He's won and been nominated for a bunch of Caesar Awards, Golden Globe Awards, Grammy Awards. Like, the dude is just getting nominated all over the place for his work. So I would say that he is a good one. He is a good composer. Oh, we've got Dory in the chat. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Alexander Desplat was replaced, as this article told us, by Lorne Balfe. And I hope I said that correctly, but I'm sure I didn't. And just on the surface of it, I'm not really sure about this decision because aside from Mission Impossible Fallout, Lorne's filmography on the things that he has worked on is not the best. If we were to just look at some of the stuff he's done recently, we have Bad Boys for Life that just came out, Six Underground, which is the Michael Bay film that was on Netflix that nobody really liked. We had Gemini Man, which was panned. And once again, these things, the reasons that these films failed is not because Lorne Balfe was the composer on them, but I'm just saying he's been attached to not so great films with the exception of Mission Impossible Fallout. He also did Pacific Rim Uprising. He also did 12 Strong and Geostorm and Ghost in the Shell. Not the best track record. But I do remember the score in Mission Impossible Fallout being a pretty good one. So maybe, just maybe, he's had a string of bad luck working on films that are poorly received. And this could indicate a turnaround for the guy. Who knows? One of the things that did come up from this, and I believe it is mentioned in the article as well, is to what degree does this mean that the tone of Black Widow is perhaps changing? If you look at the work of Alexander Desplat, he mostly, and let's just get away from his let's get away from his accolades and look at his filmography. He tends to do serious films and also, how would you describe a Wes Anderson film other than calling it a Wes Anderson film? He is able to do whimsy, and he's able to do period films as well as doing serious modern films fairly well. So it seems like he has a very broad spectrum of background experience that you can draw from in order to create compelling scores for a variety of different films. And in the case of Black Widow, I assume we'd be getting some of those more serious type scores, like Zero Dark 30 as an example. And the fact that he was pushed off of this, and that a composer who is mostly known for fast action movies has been brought in, I don't know if there's much to read into that, because I imagine that Lorne Balfe will just be doing his similar kind of fast action movie style of soundtrack, of score, I should say. And so it makes me wonder if the original Black Widow score maybe wasn't that serious kind of note, and maybe it was leaning into other directions because perhaps the film had lighter tones to it than what we're expecting to see. I don't know, it's hard to say. But I guess we'll just have to wait until the film eventually comes out in November to see. But interesting nonetheless that Marvel has taken this opportunity to get a new score for a movie that's coming out in November because maybe they had a little extra time to do it. Moving on, we have been talking a lot over the last couple of weeks of different media companies pledging money for workers, for production crews, for people in the film industry who are working on the films that those big media companies were producing. And this week we've got another one, and it is Sony. And they have established a $100 million COVID-19 global relief fund. And what is interesting about this is that it's directly comparable to the amount of money that Warner Brothers put up a couple of weeks ago, which was $100 million. However, in the case of Warner Brothers, that was specifically for the crews and for the people who were working on Warner Brothers properties when everything got shut down. The difference for the Sony package is that it includes kind of 3 different prongs of relief, and only one of those is actually giving money to the production crews that were shut out and shut down because of the virus. So it seems like Sony is taking a bit of a different route. They are also giving a lot of money to relief efforts, as it's called here, the Global Relief Fund. They are funneling money towards nonprofit organizations and trying to figure out ways of actually helping humanity more broadly. But it also means that they are delivering less money to the filmmakers and the below-the-line people who really would need this kind of money. And so I like what Sony's doing here, because we do need to all work together and we do need to help people as much as possible. But I kind of wish they would have just put up more money in that case. Say that you're going to do $100 million for your own production staff and crews that have been shut out while also doing this fund. You could call it $150 million. Say that $100 million of that are going to help out your crews and your staff, and have $50 million go towards relief efforts around the world. You know what? Call it $200 million. Whatever. This is probably all a tax write-off to them anyways. And then have that $200 million, and then have that additional $100 million go to global relief efforts, and you look even better than your competitors. Warner Brothers did this, Netflix did this, but they had their money going directly to crews who were furloughed, and Sony now is giving out less. Maybe they felt that they could do that because they had a smaller production schedule, a smaller amount of things actually going at the time that they had to shut down. But I can't say that for sure. So that could be a possibility as to why they're going this route. I kind of just wish that they were putting up more money and making sure that the crews were absolutely taken care of to the same degree that they are being taken care of by Netflix and Warner Brothers as examples. In any case, good for Sony. I just don't know if it's enough. With that said, we also need to talk about how small, independent, or even theater chains are dealing with being shut down. They are no longer allowed to run. Movie theaters have been forced to close, or a lot of the corporations have just said, you know what, we are closed now. You cannot see movies here anymore. One theater did a pretty incredible thing, and I think it's worth shouting out. So, to read the headline here, a shutdown theater turned its parking lot into a drive-in and has since sold out every movie. And the story is actually pretty great. This is a movie theater called Evo Entertainment. I'm guessing that's a theater chain, and this is just one particular theater that was converted. But what they did is that they got the special kind of white paint that you would need to paint, I believe it's high-grain white paint, that you would need to paint a wall in order to turn it into a movie screen, and just did that on an entire exterior of their building. And then, using a couple of different apps that they had either developed internally or had gotten some help with, they had figured out a way of selling the parking spots in that parking lot as a drive-in. They were able to figure out the outdoor projection of putting an actual image on that screen that they painted onto a wall, and they were piping the sound through to AM/FM radios that would be in the car. So they effectively created a drive-in theater in their parking lot. And all of the tickets for this drive-in are free. You have to reserve a spot because obviously you don't want to have a bunch of cars backed up and people not knowing what's going on, but you can reserve your spot, show up to the movie, and watch it. And they're also being very smart about how they are going about this. The film starts playing right at dusk, and they are specifically picking films that will end right at 10 o'clock or a little before that, which is when the curfew that is in effect in this part of Texas, or in Texas in general, I'm not sure which, when it goes into effect at 10 p.m. So for their first film, they started out with the latest Spider-Man film, also a crowd pleaser, a favorite for the kids, so I'm sure a lot of parents really appreciated that. And I believe down here at the bottom they talk about other films that they're planning on showing, which include Top Gun, the original Top Gun, so good, and also Grease. And Grease, as far as I remember, is a shorter film than Spider-Man, as is Top Gun. And so to me, this says that they are actively thinking about films that they can have on that screen as we get more and more daylight hours as we get further and further into summer. It's clever. There's a lot of amazing thought that was put into this, and I applaud this company for doing this. And if you're wondering how they're making money on this and why they're actually doing it, they actually are still serving food. And I'm going to tell you how after I take a drink of water, because, man, my throat's getting a little scratchy. Oh, now we've got a cat on the table, and everything's shaking. You're like Godzilla, Rocco. Oh, all right. Excuse me. I'm sorry. That was terrible. So the way that they're making money off of this little proposition is selling food. And they've said that they've gone through all of the preparations possible to make their kitchen clean and sanitary. And using a mobile app, patrons can purchase food, get the food delivered to them. You pay for the food in the app, and then an employee, once your order is done, will come out with special gloves on and just come up to your window and hand you the food. Pretty amazing. I know that this is probably hard to replicate for some theaters, especially theaters in downtown centers, like Scotiabank Theatre in Toronto could not do this. Their parking lots are underground, so that wouldn't make any sense. But for some of the more rural, some of the larger, even multiplexes that exist in kind of these like super strip mall kind of areas, like they could potentially look at this as a model that they could copy in order to get people out and to get a little bit of money coming in. And it would mean that there are more employees who are still working, getting a salary instead of being furloughed, and potentially getting less money from employment insurance or that, yes. So yeah, this is a really great little project that Evo Entertainment has done, and I commend them for it. Well done. Good thinking in this time of social distancing. Excuse me, everyone. Oh, we got Nick in the chat. How you doing, Nick? Saying that, boy, the fact that Sony has taken almost their entire summer slate and moved it a year is not a good sign. No, no, it is not. It's also interesting, though, because it seems like Sony could have potentially moved a couple of those films into November, December, like Marvel has already with Black Widow, and a couple of other studios have as well with their films. But yeah, they're just taking the tactic of putting it all the next year. So maybe it becomes a sort of giving up the award season Christmas holiday year to the big guns, which I think at this point are Dune and Marvel, and seeing what happens. It would be actually interesting to see if maybe this whole coronavirus thing gets wrapped up before, say, the end of summer, maybe early September, something like that. If then Sony decides to move back up certain films being released into a September window as kind of like a surprise, because I feel like movie studios are going to want to try to capture the fact that people can now leave their apartments and spin it into a positive. And I think if you can like thread that needle very carefully and like maybe be in talks with the big movie theater chains as well, when the theater chains say, hey guys, we're actually going to be reopening almost all of our theaters on this specific date, then I'm sure there's going to be some studios who are like, cool, and guess what? This movie's going to be there. And that is going to be a huge promotional push. It's like, what are you going to see when you can finally go back to a movie theater? I imagine it's going to be a big old blockbuster type film, because we've all been stuck watching movies on screens ranging from 40 inches to 80 if you're nasty. And being able to go see like a full-on popcorn blockbuster on a 200-foot screen, that could be really appealing to people after being stuck inside for months and months on end. This guy right here would be into that. But yeah, thank you, Nick, for that. It's an interesting thought. It's not a good sign that Sony has done that, but everything's not good right now, except for some of these positive things that I'm talking about. Now, moving on to, oh God, I need to do this better. Scrolling all the way. Okay, here we go. Moving on to ways in which things have changed in the way that we have watched movies has changed. AFI has created their own new movie club. And when I say AFI, I do not mean the pop punk band. I mean the American Film Institute. And what they've done, and I just want to say that I find this so hilarious because Steven Spielberg is the one who introduced this, and he hates films that stream for first run. He wants to get them out of the Oscars. He doesn't want to include Netflix films at all. But here he is being like, okay, I guess there's a virus going around and everyone has to stay inside. How about we just have a movie club for all of the old American film classics? Whatever. So I do find this kind of hilarious that it's Steven Spielberg who is the one introducing this and kicking this off. So yeah, the American Film Institute has created a new movie club. And this article, which was published a few days ago, said that they were starting off with The Wizard of Oz. I'm going to go to the website in just a second. But the general idea to this is that every single day, the AFI will update this particular website with a new movie, and that is going to be the Movie Club movie. Basically, the film that they want people to watch and talk about. And so today, for April 3rd, you can see that the film is Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. And the great thing that they've done here is that they have included the streaming services where you can easily find these films. So here for Dr. Strangelove, you can see that you can watch it for free on Crackle. You can get it with a Criterion Channel subscription, or you can rent or buy it on YouTube or Prime Video. And there's more options. There are more options. Let's see. Oh, I didn't even see this when I was going through this. So you've got subscription, Criterion Channel, free ads, rent, buy. You can rent and buy it from a lot of places, and you can even compare the amount of money that it would cost you so you can get the best deal. Looks like if you wanted to rent, your best bet would be Prime Video or Vudu for $1.99. I can only assume that's in American money. So this is really cool. And they've also included supplements to go along with it. So as you can see here, Dr. Strangelove has a kind of announcement here coming from Robert De Niro, who looks like he is also being sequestered in his home, but that doesn't stop him from introducing the film, or at least announcing it. And then when we go down here, even further, we see there's more supplemental material. So we have a video of Robin Williams talking about Dr. Strangelove. We have Samuel L. Jackson talking about Dr. Strangelove. We have fun little facts about the films. Like, did you know that Peter Sellers was originally signed to play 4 different parts in the film? He played 3. And Slim Pickens replaced him as Major T.J. King Kong. I never realized that there was a character in that movie called T.J. That's pretty cool. And then, yeah, we have other little facts, like Stanley Kubrick ordered a bunch of pies for a finish that was never filmed, for an ending that was never filmed, and my favorite of all time, the fact that George C. Scott was tricked by Stanley Kubrick into giving the performance that he did by telling him to just do a couple of like practice takes going way overboard, and then Kubrick would film these and just use those as the actual takes that made it into the film. So if you ever wonder why George C. Scott was so overboard, basically, in Dr. Strangelove, that's why. He was tricked into doing it. So this is a really cool little resource that they've put together. It's been updating every day. You can also, I guess there's some kind of comment section here that you can go to. There's discussion questions that will lead you in what you can talk about. And then something else that they've included here is that you can go back and see some of the other films and figure out where they are. So it looks like they have done Wizard of Oz, as I mentioned, and on April 1st they did Moulin Rouge. And they have a special little hashtag that you can put on your Twitter conversations so you can talk to other film fans about this kind of stuff. It's a cool way of curating films and bringing people together so they can actually watch the same kind of film and have a discussion be led from it. This channel is very much about film discussion, and I really appreciate what AFI has done here in putting this together. So kudos to them. Good for them. Letting all of us cinephiles talk to each other and keeping us a little bit sane during these trying times. It's actually quite a wonderful idea. So now, before I get on to the main story that I wanted to touch on, it's the one in the thumbnail, Amazon saving South by Southwest, we've got Dory in the chat. Oh, letting us know what films did you watch recently. Okay, I am going to come back to that. Let's talk about films that we're watching and films we're excited for at the end of the stream. But good to see that you're getting ahead, Dory. And I can see some films in there that are worth mentioning a little bit later on. So, the reason why most of us are here to talk about this little bit of information, the fact that Amazon has stepped in and has saved, maybe, the South by Southwest Film Festival. And what they are doing is that they have created a kind of 10-day window of exclusivity that will exist on Amazon Prime and on Amazon, which is important here. I want to also iterate that and talk about it a bit more later, where select films from South by Southwest will be put on Amazon Prime and put on Amazon to view for that 10-day window. However, these films will only be made available to the American audience, and that was a very important point that when I first heard this news, I was really wondering about. Something that any filmmaker who is going on a festival run will want is to make sure that if they're going from festival to festival to festival, that they can maintain the territorial integrity of the film, let's call it that. So if you premiere at South by Southwest and you are, let's say, an American film, that means that you have had your domestic premiere. So if you were to then go to another festival in, say, Toronto right after that, you would be having your international premiere at that Toronto festival. These kinds of things are important because certain festivals only want certain kind of premieres. If your film has premiered in the United States, Canada, and England, and then a film festival, and then you want to get into a film festival in, say, Italy, the Italian festival will look at that and say, well, you've had your domestic premiere, you've had your international premiere, you've had your European premiere, so we're basically only talking about an Italian premiere for a film that is not Italian. Do we want to do that? Probably not. So when the news of this first broke, I was really wondering, is this going to be available to everybody? And if so, does that mean that certain filmmakers are more likely to drop out because they still want their film to go on a bit of a festival run? And hearing that it is only going to be in America makes a lot of sense. I am saddened by this because it means I won't be able to watch these films and talk about them unless I use a VPN, which I could, actually. But it does mean that people in the United States are going to be able to watch a whole bunch of films from South by Southwest and be able to see and have access to films they might not have otherwise. We have to remember that at a lot of these festivals, films get shown there and then they don't really get seen out of the festival circuit and maybe on a streaming service somewhere. Doing it like this spotlights the films. It gives them a sense of importance, and that's really important. Especially if these filmmakers are trying to sell the movies to other distribution platforms. There was one other thing that I was going to mention about this. Oh, yeah, I kind of alluded to this. You are going to be able to watch these movies for free as long as you have an Amazon account. You don't need a Prime account to watch these, according to this article. As long as you just have an Amazon account, period, these things will not be behind a paywall. You'll just be able to watch it. I'm pretty sure that if you have Prime, you'll be able to watch them on Prime, but you don't need a Prime membership, which is also great. So literally everyone, probably in the United States, talking tens of millions, probably over 100 million people in that case, just being able to watch these films, which is great. So I think, okay, looks like, okay, yes. Reading the chat really quick. I'm going to touch on these things that Dobby and Nick are saying in a second. I just want to give one final thought to the Amazon South by Southwest thing. They haven't really said how the films are going to be released in this system. Whether or not, say, a film, like maybe they get 10 films, and you have a film is available for 1 day to view per day, kind of in the Mubi system of video streaming. Or will all 10 films be available for all 10 days? They haven't really talked about how that's going to work. I think they're probably waiting to see how many filmmakers they can get signed up into this program before making that kind of decision. But I have to imagine that they wouldn't have made this announcement unless they were pretty sure they were going to have a good amount of films to actually show. So yeah, I think this is pretty cool. It works in a way that makes it feel like a festival, and I'm talking in terms of the territorial rights of the film. And yeah, it could be really good, and it could be a really great way of getting some smaller, lesser known films into the eyeballs of an audience that may not otherwise have seen them. So that's wonderful. All good news. The fact that it's Amazon that's doing it, and they're a company that I don't really like that much, yeah. It kind of sucks when our corporate overlords are the only people who can save us in these kinds of situations. It's a little annoying, to be honest. Okay, so Nick has been saying a lot of stuff. I'm going to get to that now before we get into the next little thing I want to do, talk about, show you, because I think it might actually go along with it. Nick said, how long do you think it'll take for people to start going to the movies again after they reopen? I hope soon, but I also think people will be so full of fear at that point. It's so tricky. I wouldn't be surprised, Nick, and I'll touch on some of your other points after this as well, if going to a movie theater or going to public events after everything gets reopened kind of has the same trajectory as going back to flying did after 9/11. It took people a little bit of time to be comfortable with the thought of getting on an airplane, but eventually it happened. Also, I could see people going back to theaters, as an example, much faster, because these companies will be incentivized to get people back into the theater. And we all know, or maybe we don't all know, movie theaters make their best margins on selling things like popcorn and things like that. They don't make that much money from the films themselves. From Disney films especially, they make very little of the revenue, or they take very little of the revenue that is generated. So they're getting all of their revenue, or a lot of their revenue, from the high margins that they charge on things like popcorn and soft drinks. So I wouldn't be surprised if, when movie theaters were allowed to open, if they did some kind of thing that was like Tuesday prices for 2 weeks straight or something like that. They take a bit of a hit, but if they can get a bunch of people into the theater buying popcorn, buying candy, buying soda, it might be worth it. And it's going to be, and I think it could end up being kind of a cathartic thing for people. Also, going to your point here, can you imagine being in a full movie theater and then someone suddenly starts coughing? Maybe, just maybe, this coronavirus will have a positive effect on theater etiquette, and people who are sick will stay the fuck home, and they won't ruin movie-going experiences by coughing all throughout the film. Will it keep the talkers away? Probably not, but maybe we can get rid of the people coughing in public thing. And then you also really say that people would flip out. Probably. People are probably going to have a very negative reaction to coughing for a while now, or a while after this is all done. And really we should, because it's just the spreading of germs. Then you also say that really bums me out. There's definitely going to be a healing period of sorts. Absolutely. It's going to take something to get people over the mental hurdle of going to a public place. And I think corporations will know that, and they're going to try to incentivize us to get over that hurdle faster by basically bribing us out of our anxiety. And then we have Dory saying, coughing and sneezing is not the problem. The real problem are the hospitals not having enough equipment and beds for all the sick patients all at once. Currently, at this exact moment, absolutely true. Although we can't disregard coughing as a way of spreading virus, of spreading disease in general. And I think that's more what Nick was talking about. The anxiety that people are going to have to leave their homes well into the future when this situation is kind of behind us and social distancing measures are pulled back. So obviously, yes, Dory, the real problem is in hospitals and people not having enough equipment. I know you're in Brooklyn. Some of my close friends are also in Brooklyn. New York is dealing with coronavirus on a level that really no one else has. Even if you look at countries like Italy and Spain, New York is most likely going to get hit much, much harder than those countries did. So yeah, I agree. The real problem is the hospitals getting full and not having enough equipment and beds, as you say. However, to Nick's point, when we finally get past this, I think corporations are going to do their best to try to get us out of our shells and out of our apartments, and they're going to basically bribe us. I would imagine that's how they go about it. Now, let's go into a couple of things that I think are kind of interesting. As everything has been going on, we've all been stuck inside. We keep hearing about movies getting postponed, things getting shifted, schedules changing, etc., etc. But what is still happening as well, our films are still being promoted. People are still trying to keep films that are coming out in the future top of mind so that when we are able to see them, we will go see them. And I think probably the best example of this was the new trailer that we got for Peninsula. It is the sequel to the zombie film Train to Busan, the South Korean zombie film that did really, really well. It was released in 2016, I believe. And now we have a sequel for it, and now we have a trailer for it. And so you know what? Let's watch the GD trailer together. I have not seen this yet, so consider this an honest reaction. And let's just all enjoy some zombie goodness together. I hope this works out. Wait, hold on. I should probably... Oh, can I actually do that? I'm trying to figure out if OBS will... Oh no, it will cut it off, won't it? I wonder if I can change this live. Oh man. Guys, we are doing stuff right now. Yes. Oh, no, that'll squish it. Shit, I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm going to do that for right now, and then I'll change it back in a second. Hopefully, this works the way I want it to. Doing some nujitsu here in OBS, a program that I do not like very much. All right, full screen. You guys should be able to hear this as well, so monitor your speakers. I can hear a little bit of audio. This seems to be, yep, bit of music. Ooh. Okay, so it's set 4 years after the original. That almost looked like a scream. Society got effed. It's interesting, actually. So, I'm sorry, I'm not really sure how to do these reactions right now. Should I like pause things and talk about them, or wait for the whole thing to play and then go back and talk about them? But I just also want to point to, this shot in particular as a way that trailers can telegraph certain things to us as far as promotion for a film goes. So here we have what is presumably a highway, and then there's also a ship just sitting there, hanging out on the highway. Not a place where you would expect to find a ship. And I think this is probably letting us know that there was some kind of natural disaster, or perhaps maybe a nuclear bomb used to try to kill zombies, and then that would then have pushed or moved or propelled said ship onto highway. So, if just the zombies overrun everything and killed all of the humans, there's no reason for a ship to be there. So the reason that it is there is probably telling of the way in which humanity reacted to the virus on South Korea. So that said, let's continue on again with these fine people looking like they are stressed, and those people looking like they're hungry. Okay, that's not good. Survival. Oh, they turned this into... Oh, that's weird. Is that like some kind of zombie rat king? Looks like they're taking kind of a Walking Dead approach to this, where the real bad guys are just other humans and the zombies are also there, but in this the zombies are also way more active. What was that last line? I missed that. Oh, were you scared? Yeah, of course. Are you kidding? Zombies running all over the place. Also, that's an interesting way to title it. let's just look back at that. Train to Busan presents Peninsula. I don't think I've ever seen a sequel be named like that. You know, why not call it Train to Busan 2 Peninsula or Peninsula, the Train to Busan sequel? Like, I've never seen it done like this. Usually this is reserved for when a director or filmmaker, and this is a very North American example, where they attach their name to a foreign release. This happened with Oldboy. It came out as Quentin Tarantino Presents Oldboy in America, or at least that's how it was marketed. Quentin Tarantino also did that for the Canadian mockumentary Hardcore Logo, which I suggest everyone go watch if you want to see Canada's version of This Is Spinal Tap. So yeah, that's an interesting way of titling it. And that looked like... Oh, I wonder if I can get a freeze frame on that. Nope. Oh god. Everything's terrible. Everything's ruined. So that was that was a guy shooting a thing that would cause an explosion. And then here's a zombie witnessing an explosion. But is this a trick of editing? Is this a trick of editing where this zombie is actually watching a nuclear explosion from, say, a prologue where it showed how humanity tried to stop the spread of the virus? Doesn't quite look like a nuke, but maybe, just maybe it is. We don't need to watch the Mortal Shell official announcement trailer. Yeah, so I'm just going to keep this window like this. No, I'll put it back. I said I would put it back. I'm going to put it back. Nope. Da-da-da. OBS is fun when it's fun, but lots of times it's not fun at all. Let's see, we have Dory saying that Artemis Fowl goes straight to Disney+. Yes! We'll talk a bit about that after I get through a couple of other things, but I like your enthusiasm, Dory. I like your enthusiasm. So, as well as this little trailer for Train to Busan, or for Peninsula, excuse me, we also had a little bit of a tease coming from Colin Trevorrow, who I always have to pause when I pronounce his name because I want to call him Colin Trevorrow, which is obviously not how it's pronounced. But yeah, Colin Trevorrow. Cool. He posted the first image from the upcoming Jurassic World film Dominion. This is the third film in the Jurassic World trilogy, and it looks to show someone on a bicycle. I can't really tell if this is meant to be snow or dust here and why everything is so white and you see lots of smoke and stuff. Maybe it's ash, who knows? But it does seem to suggest that this is a person who is going through a very desolated, messed up, screwed up area, which could suggest that either dinosaurs went through it and mucked everything up, or once again we could be talking about the aftermath of a government saying, what's the best way to kill dinosaurs? Nuke them, I guess. And so we could be seeing someone walking through the aftermath of that. But it does lend this idea that the next Jurassic World film is going to be about humanity trying to survive in a world where they are no longer the dominant species. And I am into this one specific frame. I have no idea if the film's going to be any good. Colin Trevorrow. I'm just going to call him Colin from now on. Colin has had a bit of an interesting career. He was supposed to initially direct Episode 9 and then Episode 9 of Star Wars, and then didn't. And I'm now wondering if maybe that would have been actually for the best. He also directed a film that did really poorly, and that was the reason he was taken off of Episode 9. But the first Jurassic World, which he directed, did really, really well and broke all kinds of records. And, you know, maybe the guy can actually do a directing occasionally. It's hard to say. But this one little shot, this little screenshot, gives me some hope that at least the story that they are going to attempt to tell will be one that I want to see. So yeah, happy about that. What do you guys think about the new Jurassic World and what this screenshot is telling you? I'm sorry, I haven't been doing calls to action enough in this video. Please get in the chat. Let me know your thoughts. I've just got one more thing to talk about here that I wanted to just surface to everybody. So if you have any other news stories that you wanted me to talk about or that we can all discuss together, please let me know in the chat. Best time to do it for right now. Totally happy to hang out for a little bit longer today. Also, I'm happy to see everyone here, especially Nick and Dory. Great to see you. This is a new time slot for doing this live stream. Traditionally, they've been done on Sundays at whatever day or whatever time I could. And now I can kind of make these part of my proper work day. So we should be looking at this as a more constant. Like Cinemateq will stream live on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. I hope that's a good time for everybody. I love it when you guys come here and get in the chat and talk to me about movies. So yeah, thank you again. Thank you again. So now go on to the last little bit of news that I thought was kind of cool. I have a certain love in my heart for silent films. There's a lot of great silent cinema out there, and I think when you start tracking the progression of silent cinema from the very early days of the Lumiere shorts and Méliès all the way up to the proliferation of sound technology in the late 20s and into the mid 30s all around the world, there's a lot of very interesting film history there. And I think when you actually, this is kind of an aside, but when you get into the films that were made in America and in some parts of the world in like the mid 20s to the late 20s before sound, and even some of the silent films made in Japan in say the early 30s, because it took a little bit longer for sound to get there, they are incredible by any standard. And it kind of lends to this idea that filmmaking, as far as inventiveness and technical skill, kind of peaked in like 1928. And after the invention of sound, all they were really doing was trying to get back to that level of mastery, and it took them a while. And I think with the invention of any new major technology for a film, you can kind of see that, like with films that were employing CGI to a heavy degree. As soon as you started seeing it, except in very rare cases, it was not good, and it's taken a while to get it up to the point where we can say, oh yes, this is a mostly CGI film that is done well, that we are happy with. Same thing happened with sound. Same thing happened with film as a medium in general. Anyways, that's a little tangent, a little thought that I had on silent film. There's lots of great silent movies out there. Go watch Passion of Joan of Arc if you haven't. It's incredible. One of, if not, the greatest performance of all time. Delivered by the woman who played Joan of Arc. I forget her name right now. I feel so bad about that. Also, one of the best uses of close-up ever. Just ever. And you can find plenty of examples of that in silent cinema. To the news story I want to talk about. There's a collection of rare 100-year-old photos from the set of the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari that are now up for auction. And this is kind of great. Cabinet of Dr. Caligari came out in 1920, so it is exactly the 100-year anniversary of this landmark film. It is a German expressionist film, meaning that a lot of the sets are meant to depict the mental state and the mental anguish of the characters involved. So in this case, we get lots of angles, a lot of hard edges, a lot of just very amazing looking visuals. And you can even see it here in this kind of image. Like this, I believe, this looks like a film still to me. Like I remember this scene in the film. The way that the what would you call them? The tents in the background, the way that they all have very angular patterns on them, lots of triangles, and it all is going back to this one particular focal point in the background, and everything is just sharp, and everything seems strange and foreign, but it's something that we can also recognize, because when you look at this, you know it is a circus. It has to be a circus. It has to be some kind of traveling show of oddities and of horrors and the whatnot. And it's all just so expertly staged in a way that lets you know exactly what it is, while also presenting it in a way that you may not be used to. And of course, there are reasons behind expressionism. There's a lot to be said about it. If you're more interested in it, I'm sure there are YouTube videos up here that talk about expressionism in more detail. But when you look at this kind of stuff, and as well as a film like Metropolis from 1927, those are great examples of expressionism in German film, and had such a huge influence on Hollywood film in the 30s and 40s as well. It was wonderful. So all of these photos, it appears, are available for auction. Now that we're all in quarantine, I've been reading a little bit about how people just want to spend money. I think because it partially resembles an act of normalcy for a lot of us. We're used to spending money on things. And so when we're in a situation where we don't have control, one of the ways that we can exert control is by spending money, by buying things. So if you have the inkling and you have the cash, you could very easily buy a piece of movie history and have that to get you through the rest of this quarantine. Once again, if you have not seen The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, I highly suggest it. It was restored quite recently by Kino Lorber, I believe, and they did a 4K restoration of it from an original, or maybe not from an original negative, I shouldn't say that. But it is a fantastic restoration. They put a lot of work into it. And yeah, this is just great. This is wonderful. I love all of this. I wish I had thousands of dollars and then I could buy these photos. That'd be great. That'd be a nice little treat for myself. All right. So now, those are all the news stories that I wanted to talk about. Gonna get to Dory's last comment here before starting to go through the movies that we all watched this past week. Dory is saying that Artemis Fowl goes straight to Disney Plus. Yes. I don't know if that's a sarcastic yes or not, Dory, but if you're excited for it, cool. I'm happy you're able to watch it. I don't have Disney Plus, so I won't be able to view it, but I think a friend of mine might have worked on that. I don't know. I'd have to double check. So let's go up here, Dory, to your list of films that you watched this week. Fiddler on the Roof. That's dope. Have I seen? I don't think I've seen Fiddler on the Roof, the one from the 50s. I don't think I have. I probably should. I'm also interested in how you maybe how you formatted these, because your next one is Gilles 23 Croix du Commerce 1080 Bruel. My French is not that good. And you have 5 centimeters per second, which I have not seen. I Still Believe, which I have not seen. Contagion, which I have seen. I saw that one a few weeks ago, as I'm sure we all did. And All the President's Men, which I did see. I actually watched it. So fun fact about me. I like taking days off for major elections, even if they're in different countries. So the 2016 election, I took the day off after the election, thinking that I was just going to be drunk and having a fun time, celebrating the loss of Donald Trump and blah, blah, blah. As it turned out, I was hungover and sad the day after because Donald Trump actually won. And so I decided to watch All the President's Men for the first time on that day. And it actually really helped me out. It made me realize that men in power can be brought to justice, even if that appears to not be the case now. Not to get overly political or anything like that. And yeah, Contagion is, of course, amazing. And it's a film that I think everyone is going to have very fond memories of after we get through this little pandemic. For me, I know that I watched Hardcore a few days ago, the Paul Schrader film, his second film. And last night, I'll talk about that in a second. And last night I watched In the Shadow of the Moon. It is a film by Jim Minkle? Or Mickle? Can never remember how to pronounce his last name. He is a director who is kind of a... He's solid, but he's like always a solid C-list kind of guy. He kind of has done these more direct-to-DVD horror type films, but he always does them well. So he always shoots in Canada as well. So I like that. I can always pick out little parts of wherever he's shooting stuff. So he's done films called Stakeland and The Cold of July, or just Cold of July. Cold of July you can watch on Netflix right now. I think it's probably his best film. And In the Shadow of the Moon is a science fiction serial killer type film that he also made that was a Netflix original. And it wasn't bad. Like I say, it's kind of a C-level movie. The production, like, it was shot in Toronto, and seeing the way that they dressed up Toronto to try to make it look like Philadelphia, that was kind of endearing. But it did kind of time travel sci-fi in a way that makes sense for a lower budget, and in a way that was also compelling from a narrative sense. And the performances are all right. No, nothing's gonna get blown away. There's gonna be no Oscars awarded to it, but it's just kind of a solid film. I feel like in a lot of ways he's the poor man's Mike Flanagan, and if he gets a few more decent pictures under his belt, he might actually get a shot at something with a much larger budget like a Marvel film. I feel like he'd be the kind of director that they would look to because he can tell a compelling story. And that's what those studios tend to like, And also, people, directors who will do things that they are asked to do when in terms of, putting scenes in that will help set up a feature film and things like that. So we got Dory here saying The Fiddler on the Roof in 1971 was amazing. I don't think that was the one I was thinking of. Oh, you know what? I just realized that I was still on this view and we were all looking at this. Actually, maybe I'll keep to this view because we all can see the chat then. Although we can all see the chat anyways. So yeah, I'm going to go back to this main view so you guys can see my big face. And it looks like that pimple's kind of gone down a bit. Wonderful. That's exactly what I wanted. So yeah, Dory's saying The Fiddler on the Roof 1971 was amazing. Was there a version from the 50s? I feel like there was, because in the golden age of musicals, surely Fiddler on the Roof was made in the 50s. But the 1971 one, Dory's saying, is amazing. Good to know. Nick saying, speaking of festivals, any predictions on pushing upcoming fests like Fantasia, Blood in the Snow, After Dark? He is speaking of Toronto After Dark. Nick, can you remind me where you're from? Because when you do bring up festivals, you always tend to reference Toronto-based festivals. And I know that Fantasia is... Oh, wait. Oh, I just got Fantasia and Fantastic Fest mixed up in my mind. But I feel like you typically reference Canadian festivals. If the Fantasia is the one that takes place in Austin, then pardon me. Excuse me. But yeah, in the case of Blood in the Snow and After Dark, they are way down the line. After Dark is October, and Blood in the Snow is late November. So my guess is that we're not going to be hearing about those festivals for a while. My predictions are that they will run on time. It really depends on how we all decide to start lifting social isolation and social distancing measures and get back to society, right? So right now, in Toronto, for example, we just heard that from a local expert that we should be expecting 3 more months of social isolation, which would put us into basically the first week of July, Canada Day, which would actually be a very nice day to be able to go outside and watch some fireworks. What we don't really know is how restrictive social isolation is going to be once we're kind of given the okay to go back out into the world. There is a chance that while isolation might be lifted, there still could be the case where certain there could be the case where people are still encouraged to not gather in groups, say, larger than 25 people. So they're kind of okay with people going to parties and socializing with a very small group of people, but they will still be wondering. But there could still potentially be the issue of movie theaters not being allowed open because they have capacities that are above 25. So, it's hard to say. I can see, I'm just looking through the chat here. I'm going to get to everyone, but Uzge, hello, saying that she's pretty sure that it's going to last longer. I think that's a safe bet. I assume you're referring to my idea that perhaps this will all be over for us by July. I think that, yeah, it probably does last longer than that. I'm just going off that one health expert. There are probably several health experts who say different things. But yeah, At the same time, though, Blood in the Snow and After Dark might be very well positioned, because if everything goes back to normal in October, then maybe After Dark gets some world premieres that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have gotten, because they would have gone to Fantasia instead, premiering in Montreal. And thank you, Nick, for reminding me that Montreal, or Fantasia, is in fact a Montreal festival. So yeah, I maybe that works out for those festivals if we're all back to normal by early October. I don't know. I know Fantasia does take place earlier in the year. Typically, I'm going to, oh God, when is it? July or August, something like that. I would expect that to be pushed. I don't know if it's going to be canceled or not, because maybe by that time we're no longer guessing and we actually have been given a day. Like, hey everyone, like it's entirely possible that in July we're going to get told by our respective governments that, hey everyone, we know that it's super nice outside. We know that you want to go outside, but if you stay inside, you'll be able to go outside in September. Let's say, like, September 1st is what we're aiming for, as long as you are all good and you all stay inside. And if that happens, great. Then those festivals will be able to continue on. Fantasia would then say, well, if the government is aiming to have this all open by September, then we're going to push to the end of September and go on as we planned. And I'm guessing that there are going to be some movie theaters in Montreal that really, really want people to come to them, and they will be happy to accommodate Fantasia. So yeah, once again, it's all up in the air. I'm going to guess that After Dark and Blood in the Snow go ahead as normal. Fantasia, no idea. I would be surprised if Fantasia goes ahead as planned. But Blood in the Snow and After Dark, yeah, probably a good chance. Dory, letting me know about Gindama. It broke all the rules of movie making. Some say the greatest movie ever made. I loved it, but I would say 99% of normal people would hate it. Don't you love films like that? When you're just like, oh, this is the greatest thing of all time, but so many people would think it's trash. It kind of reminded me of Color of Pomegranate in that way. Great movie, but I would never show that to anybody, typically. I did go see it with Liz, which was very nice. It just wouldn't work for people who are kind of outside of watching films like that. I don't know if that's the best way of putting it, because that sounds very elitist, but I think people with a more Hollywood mainstream sensibility would not like that film. And I imagine Gindama, I really hope it's a French film because I keep pronouncing it with a French accent, would go by the same way. But I have not seen that, Dory. I will investigate that. Maybe that'd be one to watch while in quarantine. Nick Sainz from Toronto. What up, dude? You might live just down the street from me. Who knows? And then, yeah, what is that I was saying? Yep. And also saying hi. So that brings us to the end of the chat. Anything else quickly you guys want to talk about? Let me know. Excuse me. Oh, wait, I said I was going to talk about Hardcore a little bit, which I have not done yet. Hardcore, it was on the Criterion channel. It is unfortunately gone now. They had an entire Paul Schrader retrospective that was super cool. I watched exactly one film from it, and I feel like an idiot for having missed some of these films. Hardcore stars George C. Scott. It is Paul Schrader's second film, and if you're wondering who Paul Schrader is, he wrote Taxi Driver, the Martin Scorsese film. He also directed recently the film First Reformed that starred Ethan Hawke. Came out 2 years ago, released on A24. Probably the best film of 2018 when we look back in retrospect. Wait, no. Cold War was the best film of 2018. Yeah. Cold War was the best film of 2018. Then Roma, then probably First Reformed. I hope I'm getting these years right. So yeah, that is Paul Schrader. He also directed an excellent film called American Gigolo, starring Richard Gere, that I saw in New York a couple of years ago when they were doing a Paul Schrader retrospective, I think. So that was great. I saw it at the Metrograph. I don't know how much you guys travel for films. Dory, I know that you're in Brooklyn. Let me know if you've been to the Metrograph and what you think of it, because I really like that place, but their seats are not the most comfortable. Anyways, I saw a movie called Hardcore by Paul Schrader. Stars George C. Scott. He's a super religious dude who lives in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and his daughter goes out to California on some kind of religious retreat with her church group or school. Maybe they're the same thing. I'm not really sure. And she disappears. And so the film is essentially this kind of interesting amalgam of Chinatown and Taken. And I know that Taken came out well after this, but to describe the film as like a mid-1970s version of Taken that substitutes the sex trafficking trade of France for the pornography industry and snuff film industry of California in the mid-1970s, that would be a very apt parallel or description, a way of comparing them in my mind. Now, George C. Scott is not going around and beating people up like Liam Neeson did. He takes a bit more of a subtle approach to trying to find his daughter, but there are some punches that are landed. There is some anger that George C. Scott exercises in this role, and I like it. I'm actually starting to get really interested in like late career George C. Scott type films. I recently watched, when I say recently, I mean a few months ago, the Canadian horror film that he did called The Changeling, and he's super good in that. And that film came out in 1980. And Hardcore came out in 74, maybe 70. So it's after kind of like the prime of his career, which would have been in the early 60s, like when he did Dr. Strangelove, which we were just talking about. But I don't know, his late career stuff is kind of interesting. He's just kind of like this old lumbering guy who seems like he's a useful relic almost. And yeah, I kind of want to see more and see like what other kind of interesting stuff he was doing at the end of his career. We got Hardcore, really cool film. Watching George C. Scott figure out how to get his daughter back and then how it's all put together. The themes that Schrader also works with, and apparently this is somewhat prevalent throughout his filmography. I've only seen 3 of his directorial films, where he tries to show a moral person running up against a hard place exactly, and then seeing how well their morals hold up. In Hardcore, that's definitely the case. In American Gigolo, it's a bit more convoluted because the main character is already a male prostitute, and so they're starting from a much different moral starting point than George C. Scott in Hardcore. And in First Reformed, you also get that kind of struggle where Ethan Hawke's character, and I don't want to spoil anything in case you guys haven't seen it, but he goes through some shit as well, and he has to wrestle with morality in his own mind and what extent he should take things to, not to give anything away. Excellent film, by the way. Everyone go watch First Reformed. That's your homework for the weekend if you haven't seen it. Also, just go see Paul Schrader films. Dude's real good. He does good stuff. Yeah, Hardcore. Good. That was what I watched this week. I can't believe I only watched 2 films. I don't even know what the hell I'm doing with myself during this quarantine. I know I was watching Strike Back, but we don't need to talk about that because that's a guilty pleasure of mine. It's a very, very guilty pleasure of mine. We got Dory chiming in saying that the Metrograph, the seats felt like rocks. Yeah, they kind of do. It's weird. They're like wooden, like literally wooden, but in that kind of Muskoka chair kind of way, but not in a good way, Muskoka chair kind of way. It's hard to describe them, but yeah. It's a treat going to the Metrograph in my mind because, I'm going to New York and I'm seeing a film there. Like it's a lot of effort already to go into it. And a theater like that doesn't really exist in Toronto, like a theater that only shows films on 35 or just on film in general. So that's always a bit of a treat. But yeah, it's tough to sit through films at that theater. Bring a cushion with you if you ever end up going. So with that, I think I am at the end here. We've been going for maybe an hour and 15 minutes or so. Oh, Dory chiming in again, saying that high school auditorium wood seats are at the Metrograph. That is a good way of describing them. It's pretty much that. But they show really amazing films all the time. So they've got that going on for them, which is nice. So yeah, hour and 15 into this live stream. I think it's perhaps time to call it a day. Call it the weekend, because I am definitely going to go over there to that couch where my cat is Let's see if I can tilt down a bit and you can see him. Yeah, there he is. That guy. He's in my seat right now. He doesn't realize it, but he's going to be moving real quick. And I'm going to watch some movies. I don't know what. Actually, let's try this as a fun little turnaround while I have you guys here. I know Dory's here. I think there might be some other people here. What the hell should I watch tonight? Give me a movie. Give me a movie. I'll see if I can track it down. And let's see if it's something that I haven't seen before. That would be preferable. But yeah, let's go ahead and chat. I don't know how long this is going to take. Don't think too hard on it because my throat's starting to give out a little bit here. Oh, I was going to say that I should watch Memento and get one of those films off of my shame list. Let's see where Memento is available using the wonderful app Just Watch. I assume it's going to be on Prime. It feels like a film that would be on Prime. Memento. Oh, look at that. It's on Prime. Called it. So, okay. Good suggestion. Any other suggestions from the crowd? I've got time tonight. I might watch wrestling, but I'm also going to be watching wrestling on Saturday and Sunday, maybe. So maybe I don't need to watch wrestling tonight. But yeah, I was promising that it will be entertaining. I hope so. I have great faith that it's entertaining. I don't think a film like that would get as revered as it is because it was, and be boring. So that as well. Dory's saying I should watch Moulin Rouge. The 2001 Moulin Rouge, I bet. Also interesting, and a film that I have not seen, featuring performances by a lot of actors and actresses that I greatly enjoy and admire. Interesting. Maybe I'll just also watch M to go along with all three of these, and I can call it an M trilogy of sorts. But I've already seen M a number of times, so maybe not. Okay, those are really cool ideas. I wonder actually, let's just see where Moulin Rouge is going on. Nick, I need you to tell me what movie you want me to watch. Come on now. Anyone here who's still here that I don't know the names of because you're not in the chat, you tell me. You tell me what you want me to see. Klaus on Netflix, Dory's also saying. Dory, I've watched that already. And it's a wonderful film. But I really don't watch films twice. Unless for very special occasions. I would probably watch Klaus again at Christmas, to be fair. Mulan. Wait. Mulan. Wait, how the hell do you spell? Nope, that's Rogue. Oh my god. My spelling is falling apart, everybody. Rouge? Moulin Rouge? Moulin Rouge. Oh, it's weird. Okay, so that is on nothing that I can actually stream. So that would have to be something that I find on the pirate seas, as they say. Or on the open seas. Shit. I don't pirate things. I was going to let me know that it's Moulin. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So it looks like it's going to have to be Memento. So I will watch Memento tonight. And maybe I'll tweet about it while I'm watching it. That is at Cinemateq, as you can see, with the underscore at the end. And yeah, I'll watch Memento. Also, Dory coming in with Millennium Actress. I've always wanted to watch that because I fucking love Satoshi Kon films. And I don't know why I haven't watched it yet. Once again, I think that might be an issue to try to find streaming. Although maybe it might be on Netflix now too. But I'll keep that one in mind as well. I like how you went back to the M theme. But cool. Good suggestions, everyone. I'll get back to you next week on what I actually watched and what I thought of them. So yeah, make sure to come back to the channel on Tuesday. That's when a brand new video will be put up. Probably won't be a trailer reaction this time. It might be a proper discussion video. So hope you enjoy that. Also, on those trailer reaction videos, let me know if you guys are into that kind of stuff. I know that I'm supposed to be able to tell by the views and things like this, but I kind of like doing those doing those videos, and they're easy to put together. So there's a certain amount of there's a certain amount of appeal to them. Yeah. So, and I was reminding everyone to please like the video. Yes, please. And subscribe to the channel if you're watching this well in the future. It'd be wonderful if you did that. Come hang out with us all the time. Thank you again to everyone who showed up, who got who talk to me. I always appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and that you continue to survive during this time period that we're going through right now, and that you just stay inside, you wash your hands, and you just watch movies. Don't go outside, just watch movies. Cool. So everyone, have a good one. I'll see you later.